You're listening to Detective Tapes. Hope you enjoy the story. The rain-slicked streets of Brooklyn gleamed under the sodium glow of streetlights, a restless pulse beating through the borough's veins. It was 9:47 p.m. on March 6, 2020, a Tuesday, when the glass doors of the 84th Precinct swung open. A man stepped inside, his trench coat damp, his face carved with worry. He was tall, mid-30s, with dark hair plastered to his forehead and eyes that flickered between exhaustion and desperation. The desk sergeant, chewing a toothpick, barely glanced up. "Help you, sir?" The man cleared his throat. "My name's Julian Cresswell. My wife, she's missing. I need your help." The sergeant's toothpick paused. He slid a form across the counter. "Fill this out. Tell me what happened." Julian's hands trembled as he gripped the pen. "Her name's Elise Varnier Cresswell, 32. We were driving back from Long Island 2 days ago, Sunday night. We had an argument. She got out of the car near a gas station on Flatbush Avenue, said she needed air. I thought she'd come back, but she didn't. I waited an hour, then drove home. Haven't heard from her since." The sergeant's eyes narrowed. 2 days and you're just now reporting this? "I thought she'd cool off, maybe stay with a friend. But she's not answering her phone. We have a daughter, Amara, she's 1. Elise wouldn't just leave her. Something's wrong." The sergeant scribbled notes, then called over a detective. A woman approached, her boots clicking on the linoleum. Detective Nora Klein was 41, with sharp gray eyes and a no-nonsense bob of auburn hair. Her reputation in Brooklyn homicide was ironclad. She could smell a lie like a bloodhound sniffing carrion. She scanned Julian, noting the tailored coat, the faint stubble, the way his fingers twitched. "Mr. Cresswell," Nora said, her voice calm but probing, "let's talk in private." She led him to an interview room, its walls scuffed and gray. Julian sat, clasping his hands. Nora leaned against the table, her gaze steady. "Walk me through it, every detail." Julian exhaled. "We'd been to Long Island to visit my niece. Elise was tense all day, work stress maybe. On the drive back we argued, about money mostly. She got mad, said she couldn't breathe. We were near Flatbush and Nostrand when she jumped out. Ran toward a mobile station. I figured she'd grab a coffee, calm down. I waited, but she never came back. I drove around, called her phone straight to voicemail. Went home thinking she'd show up. She didn't." Nora's pen tapped her notepad. "What time was this?" "Around 8 p.m. Sunday, March 4. "And you didn't call anyone? Friends, family?" "I called her sister, Margaret, in Paris. She hasn't heard from Elise. I didn't want to panic anyone else." Nora studied him. Julian Cresswell was polished, banker type, probably mid-six figures. His story was plausible, but something felt off. The delay in reporting, the vague details. She'd seen grieving husbands before, and they didn't wait 48 hours to sound the alarm. "Describe Elise," Nora said. "She's 5'2", slim, long black hair, French-American, born in Lyon. She was wearing a gray coat, black jeans, white scarf. Here," he pulled out his phone, showing a photo. Elise's face filled the screen, bright hazel eyes, a warm smile, holding a giggling toddler. The picture was recent, taken in their Williamsburg loft. Nora nodded. "We'll need that photo, and the exact location where she got out." Julian gave the cross streets. Nora jotted them down, then stood. "We're on it, Mr. Cresswell. Go home, stay by your phone. We'll call if we find anything." He rose, hesitating. "Please, Amara needs her mother." Nora watched him leave, her gut twisting. She'd worked missing persons before, runaways, abductions, worse. This didn't feel like a simple domestic spat. Back at her desk, she rallied her team. 2 uniforms to canvass Flatbush, another to pull traffic cams. She called the mobile station's manager, requesting security footage from Sunday night. By midnight, Nora was sipping bitter precinct coffee, staring at Julian's statement. Elise Varnier Cresswell, 32, former analyst at J.P. Morgan Chase, now a stay-at-home mom. Married to Julian, 38, a VP at a local bank. No criminal records, no red flags. On paper, they were the perfect Brooklyn couple, loft in Williamsburg, toddler in designer onesies, weekends in the Hamptons. But Nora knew perfection was a lie. Every marriage had cracks and some hid bodies. Her phone buzzed. Officer Ruiz, one of the canvassers. "Detective, we talked to the mobile clerk. No woman matching Elise's description came in Sunday night. No one saw her on the street either." Nora frowned. "Footage. Manager's pulling it now. Should have it by morning." "Push him, I want it tonight." She hung up, her mind racing. Julian said Elise ran to the gas station, but the clerk saw nothing. Either Elise vanished into thin air or Julian was lying. Nora leaned back, staring at the precinct's flickering fluorescent lights. She'd solved cases with less, a bloody shoe, a stray receipt, but this one felt different, darker. Across the city, in a quiet Williamsburg loft, Julian Cresswell sat alone. Amara slept in her crib, unaware her mother was gone. On the coffee table, a stack of flyers waited. Missing, Elise Varnier Cresswell. Last seen March 4, 2020. Contact Julian Cresswell at email.com. No phone number, no police contact, just an email. Julian stared at the flyers, his face unreadable. Outside, the rain fell harder, washing away traces of the truth. The fluorescent lights in the 84th precinct buzzed like a swarm of trapped flies, casting a sterile glow over Detective Nora Klein's cluttered desk. It was 2 a.m. on March 7, 2020, and the mobile station's security footage had just arrived, dumped onto a USB drive by a bleary-eyed manager. Nora plugged it into her laptop, her third coffee of the night cooling beside her. The screen flickered to life, showing grainy footage of Flatbush Avenue under a drizzle-soaked sky. She fast-forwarded to 8 p.m. on March 4, the time Julian Cresswell claimed Elise stormed out of their car. The footage captured the mobile station's forecourt, pumps, a flickering neon sign, a couple of late-night customers buying cigarettes. Nora's eyes scanned every frame. No sign of a woman in a gray coat and white scarf. No Elise. She switched to the street cam, angled toward Nostrand Avenue. A black Audi, Julian's car, based on the license plate he'd provided, pulled up near the station at 8:03 p.m. It idled for 47 minutes, then drove off. No one got out. No one ran toward the station. Nora leaned back, her jaw tight. Julian had lied. The question was why. She called Officer Ruiz, who was still canvassing the area. "Any witnesses yet?" "Nada," Ruiz replied, his voice crackling through the phone. "Talked to a bodega owner across the street, a couple of taxi drivers. Nobody saw a woman matching Elise's description Sunday night. It's like she was never there." "Keep knocking on doors," Nora said, "and get me the footage from any nearby ATMs or storefronts." She hung up and pulled up Elise's social media. Her Facebook was a curated gallery of domestic bliss. Elise and Amara at Prospect Park, Elise laughing at a cafe in Williamsburg, Elise and Julian toasting at a vineyard in Bordeaux last summer. The captions were warm, almost too perfect. "Forever my home," under a photo of Julian kissing her forehead. "Amara, my heart," beside a shot of their daughter giggling in a stroller. But Nora knew better than to trust a highlight reel. Social media was a mask, and masks hid scars. Her phone buzzed again. It was Detective Malik Carter, her partner, calling from the precinct's evidence room. "Nora, you gotta see this. Got a hit on Cresswell's phone records." "On my way." The evidence room smelled of dust and old paper. Malik, a wiry man with a shaved head and a knack for digital forensics, stood over a laptop, his fingers dancing across the keys. Pulled Julian's call log from Sunday, he said. No calls to Elise's phone after 7 p.m., no texts either. But he made one call at 9:12 p.m., right after he says he drove home. To who? His mother, Vivienne Cresswell, lives in Tarrytown, Westchester County, about 20 miles north. Call lasted 6 minutes. Nora's brow furrowed. He didn't mention calling her. There's more, Malik said. Elise's phone pinged a tower near their Williamsburg loft at 7:45 p.m., then went dark. No activity since. Either her phone died or someone turned it off. Nora's mind churned. Julian claimed Elise got out of the car at 8 p.m., but her phone was already offline by then. And the Audi never left the street in the footage. Something was wrong, deeply, dangerously wrong. Get a warrant for Julian's car, she said, and pull Vivienne Cresswell's records. I want to know what they talked about. By 6 a.m., Nora was back at her desk, piecing together a timeline. Elise Varnier Cresswell, born in Lyon, France, had moved to New York at 18 to attend NYU. Graduated with a degree in finance, landed a job at J.P. Morgan's Manhattan office. Met Julian in 2014 at a banking conference in Frankfurt, Germany. They married in 2015, a lavish ceremony in the Loire Valley, France. Elise quit her job after Amara's birth in 2019, trading boardrooms for diaper bags. On the surface, their life was idyllic, but Nora had seen enough domestic cases to know that perfection was a breeding ground for secrets. Her computer pinged. An email from the lab with preliminary findings on Julian's car, a 2018 Audi Q5 which they'd impounded from his loft's garage. No blood, no hair, no obvious signs of a struggle, but the trunk's carpet fibers showed traces of bleach, recently applied, strong enough to mask forensic evidence. Nora's pulse quickened. Bleach wasn't standard car maintenance. She called Julian, keeping her tone neutral. Mr. Cresswell, we need you back at the precinct. Got some questions about the footage. His voice was strained. Did you find her? Not yet, just come in. An hour later, Julian sat across from Nora in the same interview room, his tie loosened, eyes bloodshot. Nora slid a still from the mobile footage across the table. This is your car, 8:03 p.m. Sunday. You said Elise got out and ran to the station. The footage says otherwise. Nobody got out of your car. Julian's face paled. I must have gotten the time wrong. It was dark. I was upset. Upset enough to bleach your trunk. Nora's voice was sharp now. We found traces of it, Julian. Care to explain? He shifted, his hands gripping the table's edge. Elise, she's obsessive about cleanliness, always cleaning everything. The car, the house, she probably did it herself. Nora's eyes narrowed. Her phone went offline at 7:45 p.m. before you say she left the car, and you called your mother right after you drove home. What was that about? Julian's jaw tightened. I was worried. I told her Elise didn't come back. She's my mother. She cares. Nora leaned forward. Here's the problem, Julian. Your story doesn't add up. No one saw Elise at the station. Your car didn't move. Her phone's dead. And you waited 2 days to report her missing. Why? I told you I thought she'd come back. His voice cracked, but his eyes darted to the side. A tale Nora had seen 100 times. She stood. Don't leave town, Mr. Cresswell. We're not done. As Julian left, Nora's phone buzzed. Malik. Got something weird. Those missing person flyers Julian's been handing out. They're everywhere, train stations, coffee shops, even Tarrytown. But there's no phone number, just his email. Who does that? Nora's gut twisted. Someone who wants to look worried without being bothered. She grabbed her coat. Meet me at the Williamsburg loft. We're searching it. The loft was a 10th-floor masterpiece. Floor-to-ceiling windows, exposed brick Scandinavian furniture polished to a gleam. Too polished. Nora's boots echoed on the hardwood as she and Malik combed the space. The kitchen was spotless, not a crumb on the counter. The bathroom smelled faintly of disinfectant. Even Amara's nursery with its pastel walls and stuffed animals looked like a showroom. Too clean, too perfect. Malik lifted a rug in the living room. "Nora, check this." A faint scratch on the floorboard, barely visible. Nora crouched, running her finger along it. Could be nothing, or could be something heavy dragged across. They dusted for prints. Nothing. Not a single fingerprint, not Elise's, not Julian's, not even Amara's. Nora's skin prickled. Nobody lives this clean. Malik nodded. Unless they're covering something up. Nora's phone rang. It was Ruiz, his voice urgent. "Detective, we got a hit. A traffic cam in Tarrytown, near Vivienne Cresswell's house, caught Julian's Audi pulling into her driveway at 10:15 p.m. on March 4. Stayed for 20 minutes, then left." Nora's heart pounded. Tarrytown, 20 miles north. Julian hadn't mentioned going there. "Get a team to Vivienne's house," she said. "Now." As they sped toward Tarrytown, the Hudson River glinting darkly to their left, Nora's mind raced. Julian's lies were piling up: his car, the footage, the bleach, the call to his mother, the Tarrytown trip. Elise wasn't at the mobile station. She wasn't anywhere. But Nora knew one thing: the truth was buried somewhere, and she'd dig until she found it. The drive to Tarrytown was a blur of rain-slicked highways and sodium-lit overpasses, the Hudson River a black ribbon glinting under the moon. Detective Nora Klein gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles pale, as Malik Carter navigated the GPS beside her. It was 2:30 p.m. on March 7, 2020, and the air in the unmarked cruiser crackled with tension. The traffic cam hit. Julian Cresswell's Audi pulling into his mother's Tarrytown driveway at 10:15 p.m. on the night Elise vanished, had lit a fire under Nora. Julian's story was unraveling, and Vivienne Cresswell's quaint Westchester home was the next thread to pull. "Julian didn't mention Tarrytown," Malik said, scrolling through his tablet. "Not once. Why drive 20 miles after your wife supposedly walks out?" "Because he's hiding something," Nora replied, her voice low. "And I'm betting Vivienne knows what." The Cresswell house sat on a quiet street in Tarrytown, a 2-story colonial with ivy crawling up its brick facade. The lawn was manicured, the windows dark, save for a faint glow in the living room. A single oak tree loomed in the backyard, its branches swaying in the March wind. Nora parked across the street, her eyes scanning the property. It looked like a postcard from suburban America, but Nora's gut screamed trouble. She'd seen too many perfect houses hide ugly secrets. 2 uniforms, Officers Ruiz and Patel, pulled up behind them, followed by a forensics van. Nora briefed the team. "Search the house and yard. Look for anything: blood, fibers, disturbed soil. Malik, you're with me for Vivienne. Ruiz, Patel, start in the backyard." Vivienne Cresswell answered the door in a silk cardigan, her silver hair pulled into a tight bun. She was 64, petite, with sharp blue eyes that sized Nora up like a hawk. "Detectives," she said, her voice smooth but guarded. "I assume this is about Elise." Nora nodded. "Mind if we come in, Mrs. Cresswell?" Vivienne stepped aside, her movements deliberate. The living room was a shrine to order: polished mahogany furniture, spotless cream rugs, a vase of fresh lilies on the coffee table. No dust, no clutter. Nora's skin prickled. It reminded her of Julian's Williamsburg loft, too clean, too staged. "We're investigating your daughter-in-law's disappearance," Nora said, sitting on a stiff couch. "Julian says she walked out after an argument Sunday night. You spoke to him that night, didn't you?" Vivienne's lips tightened. Yes, around 9. He was upset, said Elise left the car after a fight. I told him to give her space. She's intense, you know, always has been. Intense how? Malik asked, his pen poised. Vivienne hesitated, folding her hands. Elise is particular, obsessive even. Everything has to be perfect, her home, her clothes, even Amara. It wore on Julian. He's under so much pressure at the bank. Nora's eyes flicked to a framed photo on the mantel. Julian, Elise, and Amara at a beach in Normandy, France, last summer. Elise's smile was radiant, but her eyes were distant, like she was posing for someone else's life. Did Julian come here Sunday night? Nora asked. Vivienne's gaze didn't waver. No, he called, that's all. Nora exchanged a glance with Malik. The traffic cam said otherwise. Mind if we look around? She asked. Vivienne's smile was thin. Do you have a warrant? We do, Malik said, producing the document. Signed an hour ago. Vivienne's composure flickered, but she nodded. Very well. Nora and Malik split up, Nora heading upstairs while Malik checked the kitchen and basement. The second floor was as pristine as the first. Guest rooms with untouched beds, a bathroom smelling of lavender soap. In the master bedroom, Nora found a prescription bottle on Vivienne's nightstand, oxaliplatin, a chemotherapy drug. Vivienne had cancer, just as Julian had mentioned in passing. Nora filed it away, her mind racing. A sick mother, a lying son, a missing wife. The pieces didn't fit, yet. Downstairs, Malik called out, Nora, you need to see this. She found him in the basement, a dim space with concrete walls and neatly stacked boxes. He pointed to a corner where a tarp covered a pile of gardening tools, shovels, rakes, a bag of fertilizer. The concrete beneath was scuffed, as if something heavy had been dragged across it. Nora crouched, her flashlight catching a faint discoloration. Could be nothing, she said, or could be bleach. Like the car, Malik muttered. Forensics will test it. Outside, Ruiz waved them over to the backyard. The oak tree cast long shadows over a small garden, its soil freshly turned. Found this, Ruiz said, pointing to a patch near the tree. The dirt was looser than the rest, as if recently disturbed. Nora's pulse quickened. Get forensics out here. Dig it up. As the forensics team set up, Nora returned to Vivienne, who stood on the porch, arms crossed. Mrs. Cresswell, why did Julian come here Sunday night? I told you he didn't, Vivienne said, her voice sharp. A traffic cam says he did. 10:15 p.m. stayed 20 minutes. Vivienne's eyes flickered, but she recovered quickly. You must be mistaken. I was asleep by then. Nora let the silence hang, watching Vivienne's hands tighten. If you're protecting him, it won't help. We'll find out what happened. Vivienne's gaze hardened. My son is a good man. Elise was the problem. She was unwell. After Amara was born, she changed. Obsessed with cleanliness rules. She'd scream at Julian if a dish was out of place. Made him wear gloves in their own home. It was madness. Nora's mind flashed to the Williamsburg loft, its sterile perfection. Did she ever hurt Amara? Vivienne hesitated. Not physically, but she'd snap at her, lose patience. Julian worried for his daughter. Nora filed it away. Elise's behavior mirrored the original document's description of Miko's obsessive-compulsive tendencies, but Vivienne's tone felt rehearsed, like she was laying groundwork. Before Nora could press further, Patel called from the backyard. Detective. The forensics team had unearthed a shallow pit 2 feet deep. No body, but the soil yielded a single item, a white scarf, stained with dirt and something darker, possibly blood. Nora's stomach churned. It matched Julian's description of Elise's outfit. Bag it, she told Patel. Rush it to the lab. Back at the precinct, Nora and Malik pored over the evidence. The scarf was a bombshell, but it wasn't enough. No body, no crime scene, just a lying husband and a suspicious mother. Nora pulled Elise's medical records, obtained via an emergency warrant. In 2019, after Amara's birth, Elise had been diagnosed with obsessive-compulsive disorder, likely triggered by postpartum stress. She'd been prescribed sertraline but stopped taking it in October 2019, claiming it dulled her emotions. Her therapist's notes described a woman unraveling. Patient reports compulsive cleaning, irrational fears about contamination, increasingly irritable with husband and child. Nora leaned back, rubbing her temples. Elise's condition explained the loft's sterility, maybe even Julian's frustration. But it didn't explain the scarf, the bleach, or Tarrytown. She called Julian, her voice cold. "We need you at the precinct. Now." He arrived at 8 p.m., his face haggard. Nora didn't waste time. "We found a scarf in your mother's backyard, white like the one Elise was wearing. Care to explain?" Julian's eyes widened. "That's impossible. She left the car on Flatbush." "Stop lying," Nora snapped. "Your car was in Tarrytown at 10:15 p.m. Sunday. You never mentioned it. Why?" Julian's hands shook. I went to tell my mother in person. I was scared. Elise was gone. I didn't know what to do." "And the scarf, buried in her yard?" "I don't know," he shouted, his voice breaking. "Maybe she dropped it there another time." Nora leaned in, her voice low. "You're hiding something, Julian, and I'm going to find it." As he left, Nora's phone buzzed. The lab results on the scarf. The dark stains were blood, human type O positive, matching Elise's records. But there was something else, traces of a sedative, zolpidem, in the fabric. Nora's mind raced. Zolpidem was a sleeping pill not prescribed to Elise. Had someone drugged her? She turned to Malik. "Get Vivienne's medical records, check for zolpidem, and pull Julian's bank statements. I want to know every move he's made." By midnight, Nora stood alone in the precinct's evidence room, staring at the scarf in its plastic bag. Elise's face haunted her, those hazel eyes from the photo, bright but brittle. Nora had seen cases like this before. A husband pushed to the edge, a wife lost to her demons. But this felt bigger, darker. Vivienne's involvement, the buried scarf, the sedative, it all pointed to a plan, not an impulse. Outside, Brooklyn pulsed with life, unaware of the shadow creeping through its streets. Nora's phone buzzed again. "Malik. Vivienne S. on oxaliplatin for cancer, but no zolpidem in her records. Julian's bank statements show a purchase at a pharmacy in Manhattan on March 2. Guess what? Sleeping pills." Nora's grip tightened on the phone. "Bring him in tomorrow." She hung up, her eyes locked on the scarf. The truth was close, she could feel it, but the deeper she dug, the uglier it got. The interrogation room at the 84th precinct smelled of stale coffee and desperation, its gray walls closing in like a trap. It was 10 a.m. on March 8, 2020, and Detective Nora Klein sat across from Julian Cresswell, her gray eyes locked on his. Julian looked like a man unraveling, shirt wrinkled, stubble darkening his jaw, hands fidgeting on the scarred metal table. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the faint hum of the precinct's HVAC. Nora had him cornered, and they both knew it. Malik Carter stood by the door, arms crossed, his presence a quiet threat. On the table lay a manila folder, lab reports, bank statements, the blood-stained scarf from Vivienne's backyard. Nora tapped the folder, her voice low and sharp. "You're out of time, Julian. The scarf has Elise's blood. Your car has bleach. You bought zolpidem 2 days before she vanished. And you were in Tarrytown, not Brooklyn, when you said she walked out. Start talking or I'll bury you myself." Julian's eyes darted to the folder, then away. "I told you she left the car. I don't know about the scarf or any pills." Nora leaned forward, her voice cutting like a blade. You bought sleeping pills at a Duane Reade on March 2. Zolpidem, same as the traces on the scarf. Elise wasn't prescribed it. You drugged her, didn't you? Julian's face twitched, a crack in his facade. No, I got them for myself, stress at work. Bullshit, Malik snapped, stepping closer. You drove to your mother's house at 10:15 p.m. Sunday. Traffic cam caught you. You lied about it. Why? Julian's hands clenched, knuckles white. I was scared, okay. Elise was gone. I needed to talk to my mom. Nora opened the folder, sliding a photo across the table. The scarf, white and bloody, dug from Vivienne's garden. This was buried in her backyard. You were there that night. Connect the dots, Julian, because I already have. He stared at the photo, his breathing shallow. For a moment, Nora thought he'd break, but he shook his head, voice hoarse. I didn't hurt her, I swear. Nora stood, pacing the room. She'd broken tougher men than Julian, mob enforcers, serial liars, but his defiance was a puzzle. Fear, not guilt, radiated from him. She changed tack. Tell me about Elise. You said she was obsessive. How bad was it? Julian exhaled, his shoulders sagging. It started after Amara was born. She'd cleaned the loft for hours, floors, counters, even the walls. Wore gloves, made me wear them too. If I touched anything without them, she'd scream. Said I was contaminating everything. She'd check Amara's crib 10 times a night, make sure the sheets were perfect. It was exhausting. Nora nodded, recalling Elise's medical records. Obsessive-compulsive disorder, untreated since October. Did she ever threaten Amara? Julian hesitated, his eyes flickering. Not exactly. She'd get frustrated, snap at her. Once she said she couldn't stand Amara's crying, that it made her want to disappear. I was scared for my daughter. Nora's gut twisted. Elise's condition was real, but Julian's tone felt rehearsed, like he was building a defense. So you drugged her to make her disappear? No, Julian slammed his fist on the table. I loved her. Then why's her blood in your mother's yard? Malik asked, his voice calm but lethal. Julian froze, his face draining of color. Nora leaned in, her voice soft but relentless. You're protecting someone, Julian, or you're guilty. Which is it? He buried his face in his hands, shoulders shaking. For a long moment the room was silent. Then, in a broken whisper, he said, It was an accident. Nora's pulse spiked. What was? Julian looked up, eyes red. I didn't mean to, I gave her the pills, okay? In her wine, Sunday night, just to calm her down. She was hysterical, screaming about Amara's nursery being dirty. I thought she'd sleep it off. Nora's mind raced. Zolpidem in wine, not a lethal dose, but enough to knock Elise out. What happened next? Julian's voice cracked. We drove to Long Island, like I said. She was drowsy, nodding off. On the way back, she woke up, realized what I'd done. She went crazy, hit me, grabbed the wheel. I pulled over near Flatbush. She stumbled out, fell, hit her head on the curb. There was blood. I panicked. Nora's eyes narrowed. So you drove her to Tarrytown instead of a hospital? Julian shook his head, tears streaming. She wasn't breathing. I checked her pulse. She was gone. I didn't know what to do. I drove to my mom's. I told her everything. Nora exchanged a glance with Malik. The story was plausible, barely, but it didn't explain the buried scarf or the bleach. What did Vivienne do? She helped me. Said we had to hide it for Amara's sake. We wrapped Elise in a tarp, buried her in the backyard. I cleaned the car, the loft, everything. Nora's stomach churned. Where is Elise now, Julian? He pointed to the scarf photo. There, under the oak tree. Nora stepped out, leaving Malik to watch Julian. She called the Tarrytown team, her voice urgent. Dig deeper under the oak. Now. By 3 p.m., Nora and Malik were back in Tarrytown, the Cresswell house swarming with forensics techs. Vivienne sat on her porch handcuffed, her face a mask of defiance. The backyard was a crime scene, floodlights illuminating the oak tree's gnarled roots. A tech waved Nora over, his face grim. "We found her." The pit was 4 feet deep, the soil heavy with rain. Elise Varnier Cresswell lay in a fetal curl wrapped in a blue tarp. Her gray coat was stained with blood, her black jeans caked with mud. Nora knelt, her breath catching. Elise's face was pale, her hazel eyes closed, a bruise darkening her temple. The scarf wasn't around her neck, it had been placed beside her like an afterthought. "Cause of death?" Nora asked the coroner, Dr. Lynn. "Preliminary, blunt force trauma to the head. Maybe a fall, maybe not. We'll need an autopsy. Tox screen for zolpidem too." Nora nodded, her mind spinning. Julian's story, an accidental death, a panicked cover-up fit the evidence but not perfectly. The scarf's burial, Vivienne's lies, the bleach, it felt planned, not spontaneous. She approached Vivienne, who stared at the dig site, her lips pressed tight. "Julian says it was an accident," Nora said. "You helped him bury her. Why?" Vivienne's eyes met Nora's, cold and unyielding. "To protect my son. Elise was destroying him, her rules, her rages. She wasn't fit to be a mother." Nora crouched, her voice low. "Was it really an accident, Vivienne, or did you plan it?" Vivienne's jaw twitched. "You don't understand. She was a monster. Julian deserved better." Nora stood, signaling a uniform to take Vivienne to the precinct. Back in Brooklyn, she interrogated her separately. Vivienne's story mirrored Julian's, an accident, a fall, a desperate cover-up, but Nora caught discrepancies. Vivienne claimed she was asleep when Julian arrived, only waking when he confessed. Yet her phone records showed a text to Julian at 9:45 p.m. "Is it done?" Nora slammed the text printout on the table. "You knew, Vivienne, before he got to Tarrytown. What did you plan?" Vivienne's composure cracked, her hands trembling. "I didn't plan anything. I wanted him free. Elise was killing him inch by inch." Under pressure, Vivienne admitted more. In February, Julian had confided in her about Elise's worsening OCD. She'd scream at Amara, lock herself in the bathroom, scrub her hands raw. Julian feared for his daughter, but divorce wasn't an option. Elise threatened to take Amara to France. Vivienne, battling cancer, saw her son's despair and made a choice. "I told him to sedate her," she confessed. "Just to rest. I didn't know he'd go further." Nora's blood ran cold. Vivienne hadn't killed Elise, but she'd planted the seed. The autopsy, delivered at midnight, confirmed zolpidem in Elise's system, but the fatal blow wasn't a fall. Dr. Lynn found ligature marks on her neck, faint but unmistakable. Strangulation, not a curb. Julian's accident story was a lie. Nora confronted him again, the autopsy report in hand. "You strangled her, Julian, after the pills, after the fight. Why?" Julian crumpled, sobbing. "She wouldn't stop. She woke up, attacked me, said she'd take Amara, ruin me. I grabbed her scarf, I didn't mean to." Nora let him talk, piecing together the truth. Julian had drugged Elise, driven her to a quiet stretch of Flatbush, and killed her when she fought back. Vivienne had helped bury the body, even digging the pit 2 days earlier while her husband, Roland, was at a conference in Frankfurt. The flyers, the lies, they were a performance, a grieving husband and mother desperate to sell their innocence. As Julian was booked for murder, Nora stood outside the precinct, the Brooklyn skyline glittering coldly. Elise's death wasn't just a crime. It was a tragedy born of silence, of a woman's unraveling mind and a husband's breaking point. Vivienne's cancer, Julian's pressure, Elise's OCD, they'd collided in a perfect storm of despair. But one question lingered. Had Vivienne known Julian would kill? Her text, her calm, suggested more than complicity. Nora vowed to dig deeper for Elise's sake and for Amara, now motherless in a world of lies. The Brooklyn Supreme Court was a fortress of stone and glass, its marble halls echoing with the weight of justice. On May 22, 2021, 14 months after Elise Varnier Cresswell's body was unearthed beneath the oak tree in Tarrytown, the courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Detective Nora Klein sat in the back row, her auburn hair tucked behind her ears, her gray eyes fixed on the defendant's table. Julian Cresswell, once a polished banker, now looked hollow in his ill-fitting suit, his wrists cuffed, his gaze locked on the floor. Beside him, his mother, Vivienne, sat rigid, her silver bun immaculate despite the handcuffs. The air was heavy, charged with the ghosts of a marriage undone and a life extinguished. Nora had spent the past year building the case, her nights haunted by Elise's face, those hazel eyes from the photo, bright but broken. The trial had been a grueling marathon, weeks of testimony, forensic reports, and Julian's unraveling lies. The prosecution, led by Ada Carla Morno, had painted a damning picture. A husband driven to murder by his wife's mental illness, aided by a mother desperate to save her son. The defense argued diminished capacity, citing Julian's diagnosed depression and Elise's escalating OCD. But Nora knew the truth was uglier, rooted in choices, not just despair. The jury filed in, their faces unreadable. Judge Evelyn Harper, a stern woman with a reputation for fairness, adjusted her glasses. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreperson, a middle-aged teacher, stood. We have, Your Honor. Nora's pulse quickened. She glanced at Malik Carter, seated beside her, his jaw tight. Across the aisle, Elise's sister, Margaret Varnier, had flown in from Paris. Her eyes were red, her hands clutching a photo of Elise and Amara. The toddler, now 2, was with her grandparents in Lyon, spared the courtroom's grim theater. For the charge of second-degree murder against Julian Cresswell, the foreperson read, we find the defendant guilty. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Julian's head dropped, his shoulders shaking. Vivienne's face remained stone, but her hands trembled. The foreperson continued. For the charge of accessory to murder against Vivienne Cresswell, we find the defendant guilty. Nora exhaled, the tension in her chest loosening. Guilty. The word was a hammer, final and unyielding. But it didn't bring Elise back, didn't erase the image of her body in that tarp, didn't unorphan Amara. Judge Harper's gavel cracked. Sentencing is set for June 15, 2021. Court adjourned. Outside, the spring air was crisp, the Brooklyn skyline sharp against a cloudless sky. Nora and Malik stood on the courthouse steps, the crowd dispersing around them. Margaret approached, her French accent soft but firm. Thank you, detective, for finding her. Nora nodded, her throat tight. I wish it ended differently. Margaret's eyes glistened. Elise was sick. She hid it well, but I saw it when I visited last year. The cleaning, the rules, she wouldn't let me hold Amara without washing my hands 3 times. I should have pushed her to get help. You couldn't know, Nora said, but the words felt hollow. She'd read Elise's therapist's notes. Patient exhibits severe OCD compounded by postpartum stress. Refuses medication, fears dependency. Husband reports increasing agitation. Elise had been a ticking bomb, and Julian had chosen to detonate it. Malik touched Nora's arm. You did your job, that's what matters. But Nora wasn't sure. She de-solved the case, but the why gnawed at her. Why had Julian snapped? Why had Vivienne helped? The answers lay in the months leading up to March 4, 2020, a story pieced together through evidence, confessions, and the fragments of a broken family. It began in the fall of 2019, when Elise's OCD spiraled. After Amara's birth, she'd quit her job at J.P. Morgan, trading Manhattan boardrooms for their Williamsburg loft. The shift was brutal. Elise, once a sharp analyst who dazzled at a Frankfurt banking conference, became a prisoner of her own mind. She scrubbed the loft until her hands bled, demanded Julian wear disposable gloves at home, and forbade Amara's toys from touching the floor. Her Facebook posts, sunlit photos of Amara, captions dripping with love, were a lie, a desperate mask for her unraveling. Julian, a vice president at a Brooklyn bank, was drowning. His colleagues called him a rising star, charming and meticulous, but at home he was a ghost. Elise's rules suffocated him. No shoes indoors, no touching surfaces without sanitizing, no spontaneity. He tried to help, taking her to a therapist in Manhattan, securing a sertraline prescription. For a brief period in summer 2019, Elise improved, her smiles returning. But by October, she stopped the meds, claiming they dulled her. The rages came back, fiercer. She'd scream at Amara for spilling milk, lock herself in the bathroom, and call Julian at work, threatening to end it if he didn't come home. Nora had found Elise's journal hidden in a locked drawer in the loft. The entries, written in precise French, were a window into her torment. "I know I'm hurting them, but I can't stop. The dirt is everywhere. Julian looks at me like I'm a stranger. Amara cries and I hate myself." The final entry, dated March 1, 2020, read, "I want to go back to Lyon, start over, but Julian won't let me take her." Julian's own descent was quieter but no less deadly. In November 2019, he'd seen a psychiatrist, diagnosed with depression triggered by work stress and Elise's behavior. He hid it well. His colleagues at the bank saw only the polished VP, not the man who drank alone in his car after work. By January 2020, he'd confided in Vivienne, his mother, during a visit to Tarrytown. Vivienne, battling pancreatic cancer, was fiercely protective. Her husband, Roland, a German-born engineer, was often away at conferences, leaving her alone in their colonial home. She listened as Julian poured out his pain. Elise's threats to take Amara to France, her outbursts, her refusal to seek help. Nora had uncovered their plan through Vivienne's Line app messages, mirrored on Julian's phone. On February 28, 2020, Vivienne texted, "You can't live like this. Sedate her if you must, I'll help." 2 days later, Julian bought Zolpidem at a Manhattan pharmacy. On March 2, Vivienne and Julian dug a pit in her backyard while Roland was in Frankfurt. The act was methodical, chilling, a mother and son preparing a grave. On March 4, Julian laced Elise's wine with Zolpidem during dinner at their loft. Amara was with Margit's parents in Lyon, a convenient arrangement Elise had made to visit her niece. After dinner, Julian suggested a drive to Long Island, claiming it would calm her. Elise, drowsy from the pills, agreed. On a quiet stretch of Flatbush Avenue, she woke, realized she'd been drugged, and attacked Julian. In a rage, he grabbed her scarf and strangled her, the ligature marks later confirmed by the coroner. He drove to Tarrytown, where Vivienne helped him bury Elise under the oak tree. The flyers, the police report, they were a charade, a desperate bid to look innocent. The sentencing hearing on June 15, 2021 was swift. Judge Harper's voice was steady as she addressed Julian. "Mr. Cresswell, your actions were not a momentary lapse but a calculated choice to end a life. Your wife struggled with mental illness, yet you chose violence over compassion. For the murder of Elise Varnier Cresswell, I sentence you to 20 years in prison, with no parole for 15. Julian's sob echoed in the courtroom. Nora watched, her face impassive. The prosecution had pushed for first-degree murder, citing the premeditation, but the jury settled on second-degree, swayed by Julian's depression and Elise's threats. Nora disagreed. She'd seen the Zolpidem receipt, the dug pit, Vivienne's texts. It was planned down to the last lie. Vivienne's sentence was lighter but no less damning. "Mrs. Cresswell," Harper said, "your complicity in concealing this crime and aiding your son's actions shows a profound disregard for justice. For accessory to murder, I sentence you to 7 years with parole eligibility in 4. Vivienne's face didn't flinch, but her eyes were distant, as if she'd already accepted her fate. Nora wondered if her cancer would outpace her sentence. Vivienne's oncologist had testified, 6 months to a year, maybe less. The irony was cruel. A mother who'd buried her daughter-in-law to save her son, only to face her own mortality behind bars. As the courtroom emptied, Nora lingered, her mind replaying the case. The evidence was airtight: the scarf, the Zolpidem, the ligature marks, the confessions. But the human cost gnawed at her. Amara, now in Lyon with her grandparents, would grow up without parents. Elise's colleagues at J.P. Morgan had sent flowers to the precinct, their notes filled with shock. She was brilliant, always smiling. How did this happen? Julian's co-workers echoed the sentiment, stunned by the star who'd fallen so far. Nora stepped outside, the Brooklyn air warm with early summer. Malik joined her, his voice quiet. "You okay?" She shrugged. "Cases like this, they don't end, not really." He nodded. "Amara's with family, that's something." It was, but it wasn't enough. Nora thought of Elise's journal, her desperate scrawl. "I want to go back to Lyon." She'd never made it. Instead, her life ended in a shallow grave, her daughter's future shaped by loss. Nora's job was to find the truth, but the truth couldn't undo the damage. That night she drove to Tarrytown, the Cresswell house now dark and empty. The oak tree stood sentinel, its roots still scarred from the dig. Nora stood in the backyard, the moon casting shadows over the disturbed soil. She didn't know why she'd come, closure, maybe, or guilt. Elise had been a victim of her mind, her marriage, and a system that failed to catch her fall. Julian and Vivienne were monsters, but they were human too, broken by pressure and pain. Nora's phone buzzed, a text from Margaret. "Amara drew a picture today, said it's for her mammon." Attached was a photo of a child's scribble, a woman with black hair and a white scarf. Nora's throat tightened. She typed back, "She's got family, that matters." As she drove back to Brooklyn, the city lights blurring through her windshield, Nora made a silent vow. She'd keep digging, keep fighting for the Elises and Amaras of the world. Because where there were people, there was pain. And where there was pain, there was a chance to make it right.